It's showtime, it's yo time. It's game time, it's go time. You got one shot at a gold mine.
Behind all the smiles, laughs, filters, and jokes, there are a lot of teens silently struggling with their mental health. It is very important that us as teenagers feel safe to express our emotions because it is not healthy to keep those emotions bottled up inside.
It's easy to fall into unhealthy habits and lose motivation to engage academically and outside of school due to these bottled up emotions, considering we often struggle with navigating our feelings. Additionally, school can be very stressful for me and many other students, and that stress can present itself in numerous ways.
We often don't talk about our mental health because it can feel like we're not being seen or heard by those around us, or there's a fear of being misunderstood. Over time, I've also noticed my friends struggling mentally, and even though it can affect their performance in school, they tend to not share their struggle with the adults around them.
Teens don't always get the chance to speak up and speak out, which can lead to anger and frustration, and then results in substance abuse and numbing the pain. Then they think it's a coping mechanism. I'm Khadijah Wilcox, a junior at DC21, and this is our first episode of Black Voices in Color, a student podcast where we discuss profound topics that focuses on Black identity, culture, and Black excellence.
I'm Kayla Clark, and I'm a senior at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College. And Black Voices in Color is produced by Denver Public Schools, and it's designed to elevate the voices of Black students in our district.
And I'm Andrea Shepard. I attend East High School, and I am a senior, and I am soon to graduate. This is such an important topic to talk about because a lot of us teens hide the truth about what we are going through and feel like we can't open up because we might not want to be embarrassed, judged, or have people treat us like a charity case.
I'm Kenaya Gibson. I go to Bruce Randolph, and I'm in 11th grade. Today, we're going to talk about how students' mental health, how it impacts our lives, and how to navigate life when your mental health is diminishing. So let's get into it, guys. Does your mental health impact your daily life?
Yes, guys. My mental health has impacted me a lot. When I'm struggling, I am less organized, and because that, I'm a student in leadership, and that's not a good thing, I feel like.
Yeah, that's really relatable, Khadijah. When I'm struggling with my mental health, I fall behind at school, within my internship, and even my duties at home.
Yes, Kayla, I honestly feel you on that because it's affected me in a way where I can't perform academically how I usually do, and it causes me to fall behind on my assignments, and it's really difficult for me to concentrate.
I agree with that a lot. For me, it causes me to experience life in ways that are out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm. For example, when my mental well-being is in a bad state, I'm unmotivated to do things and I have low amounts of energy. However, when it's in a good place, I am more active, talkative, and energetic, and I get a lot of stuff done. That's my normal. So when I feel anything outside of that, that's when I know something is wrong. On that note, how do you distinguish the difference between normal stress and dealing with a mental issue?
The way I can distinguish the difference between my normal stress and a mental health issue is how it affects my body. When I experience regular stress, I typically feel overwhelmed for a short period of time, but I'm still able to complete my responsibilities. Compared to when it's a mental health issue, the feeling of stress lasts longer. It affects my sleep, and it affects my motivation for anything Wait, I'm gonna redo that whole thing. Okay. The way I can distinguish the difference between my normal stress and a mental health issue is how it affects my body. When I experience regular stress, I typically feel overwhelmed for a short period of time, but I'm still able to complete my responsibilities. When it's a mental health issue, the feeling of stress lasts longer. It affects my sleep, my motivation, and my emotion.
Normal stress is feeling overstimulated by things like school, social relationships, and work. A mental health issue causes my emotions to feel more intense, like feelings of anxiety, depression, or lack of motivation, even though nothing is wrong. It goes on for longer periods of time, like you mentioned, and the most notable difference is that how much it affects your daily life and how much more difficult it is to regulate your emotions.
I feel both of you on that on a very high level because stress makes me feel like stress to me, it just feels like dealing with small stuff like school, home, relationships, even sometimes work. And it's like a little overwhelming, but it's not too bad. You know, I can bounce back very fast and it's just you know. But then when it's a mental thing, it's like my body reacts very differently. My head hurts a lot. I can't eat much, or I overeat. And then I just feel like highly depressed and unmotivated to actually get up and do my everyday duties. And my sleep is very messed up. Like some nights I can sleep, and there's a lot of nights where I can't sleep, or my sleep schedule is very thrown off with me sleeping throughout the day so much.
I feel you on that. As a teenager, my bad. As a teenager, I think normal stress is feeling overwhelmed by things like school, friendships, or pressure, but eventually feeling better after resting or talking to someone. But a mental health issue feels deeper and lasts longer. It's like constantly feeling anxious, sad, or unmotivated, even when nothing specific is wrong. The biggest difference to me is how much it affects my everyday life and emotions.
For students, addressing our mental health issue is a priority, and it is important that the adults in our lives understand how we feel.
So we're going to continue this conversation with a guest who knows quite a bit about how to help young people navigate their mental well-being. We'll meet her right after this break.
Welcome back to Black Voices in Color. Joining us today, we have Kat Lovejoy, bilingual community connector for a Denver Children's Advocacy Center.
Since she works with youth on a regular basis, Kat can give us insight into what students dealing with mental health struggles are going through and how their parents, teachers, and community can show up for them with more support. Kat, we're so glad you're here with us. To get us started, can you tell us about your work as a bilingual community connector at Denver Children's Advocacy Center?
Yes, thank you for having me. It's an honor. I work at an organization that supports kids who've been through trauma. So abuse, neglect, maybe witnessing a crime, maybe immigration trauma, right? And the goal there for us is to offer them resources like therapy to help them get to overcome, we'd say, that experience, right? So I'm not a therapist. My goal is to come into the community and have conversations like this and talk about what does mental well-being mean, how does stress affect our lives, just like you guys are talking about today.
Students are consistently talking about their mental health in school, on social media, and with their friends. When we're planning for this show, you gave us an interesting perspective on how you define being mentally healthy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love talking about this. So good question. So my experience, especially working with youth, is that we tend to use the word mental health a lot, right? And mental health tends to have a stigma. In that if I say I'm struggling with mental health, people think, oh, she must be crazy. She must have bipolar disorder. She must be schizophrenic, right? But the idea is we all have a brain. We all have a mental capacity to us. And so when we say mental health, we're actually talking about what I like to call mental well-being. And the reason we at DCAC use the term mental well-being is because the World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being where you're able to identify your own capacity at doing things, overcome normal stressors of the day, right, and life, contribute to your community and to your family, right? And so instead of having this idea of like, well, am I crazy? It's more like, well, how am I well mentally? Can I do those three things on a daily basis?
There are so many stereotypes out there about our generation. What's one thing about mental health that you think adults or even other students get totally wrong, especially when you consider what youth are going through today?
Yeah, I think adults need to understand that you guys know what you're talking about more than they do. I think even in your conversation before I came on, you know a lot about your mental health and you're able to describe it in ways that a lot of adults can't. And so adults need to take that into account of what you're going through, you know what you're talking about, and they need to hold that with a lot of space and respect, and that's the best way to support you, if that makes sense.
I totally agree. That is a great way to for adults to support us, because obviously we know better than anyone what we're actually going through.
Yep.
Now, we were looking at some research from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and honestly, it's pretty heavy. They say 40% of high schoolers feel persistent sadness or hopelessness. Since we know so many of us are struggling, how does that actually show up in real life? How can you tell if a friend is just having a bad week or if it's something more serious like depression or anxiety?
Yeah. So you guys talked a little bit about this on the intro as well, right? Like the idea of like, when I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed and it tends to go away, right? I resolve the issue. I get my test done. I graduate. I work something out with my friend and the stress goes away. That's a normal positive stress. It's something that we all feel and we need to normalize that, right? Not all stress is bad. But if you start to notice those things you're talking about where it's, affecting your friends or your ability for a longer term to get things done or to do schoolwork, or if you're noticing those coping skills you're talking about, right? Like maybe more screen time, maybe, more, hanging out with friends in environments that aren't as healthy, right? And doing things that aren't as healthy, eating under or overeating, right? That's when we start to see that maybe, I wouldn't call it abnormal. We're trying to get through a difficult situation, but it's not the healthiest way. And so when you notice that in yourself, it's good to be like, okay, what can I do instead to move this from hard stress to a more tolerable, positive stress in a healthy way? And in friends, it's really about following your gut, right? Like I can tell you're having a bad day versus this has gone on for a long time, or you don't seem like yourself. And then that's when we might want to call in someone else to support them, if that makes sense.
On that note, if someone's mental health is starting to deplete faster and it's causing them to push away potential support, how might they go about that? How else would they go about that?
Yeah, good question. We all deal with stress, which the clinical terms are tolerable or toxic stress. When we're moving away from being positive, right, it becomes tolerable, but it's still affecting me more, or toxic, where it's really affecting me. And everyone deals with that in a different way. Some people are going to get more outgoing, more maybe hyperactive, not because they have any issue like bipolar, it's just how they're coping. And some people are going to isolate. This might be a little technical, but we talk about it as a window at DCAC. So you have a window of tolerance. If you're in your window, those are the times when you identify your own capacity to get things done. You're overcoming stressors. You're contributing to your family and your community. You're in your window. If you go out of that window, some people will go up and get hyper aroused. That's when they're really anxious, maybe some panic attacks, maybe overly outgoing. Maybe in Spanish, the term is inquieto, like you just can't be quiet. You can't calm yourself, right? And then there's under the window, which is hypo aroused, right? And that's when you start to remove yourself. You start to feel more sad. You start to isolate. So people who are in that state for a longer time, you'll start noticing differences, but there's no one way to feel it, right? Some people stop eating, some people eat more. Some people sleep less, some people sleep more. So that's why it's so important to notice what's your gut saying. Is this how my friend normally is, or is something else going on? And calling in someone else to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As a community connector, you see a lot. Why do you think so many students, especially those dealing with trauma or just the stress of their environment, are hitting a breaking point right now? What are the root causes you're seeing?
Yeah, well, so when we talk about, and this is important for you all to know, but also for the adults in your lives to know, when we talk about adolescence, you guys, and it's a really good thing, okay? Don't let any adult tell you, like, you crazy, you adolescents. No, it's a good thing. You're going through a change bodily and mentally that is changing everything about who you were before. Between 9 and 12 and beyond, it's a big change. The same change that you go through when you are going from 3 to 6 years old. It's not as obvious, but mentally you're developing differently, physically you're developing differently. So the idea, that's a stressor in and of itself. You're starting to face more like, who am I? Your prefrontal cortex is developing, so you're starting to actively learn more about cause and effect. If I do this, what's going to happen? And sometimes because we're learning more about that, we make the mistake in order to learn it, right? Mm-hmm. Another stressor. Very normal, very good, but it's a stressor. And then there's dopamine. Your dopamine sensors are either hyperactive or there's more dopamine, so you're always going for what feels good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
These are all changing in you without any of your control, without anything happening around you that's going to cause more stress. So that's number one, right? You're going through all these changes that are normal and good, but they cause more stress. 2, you have more responsibility, right? We talked about this before where it's like, well, now I have to get good grades. I have to go to college. I have to take care of my family. Sometimes I have to help my dad with his stuff or my mom with her stuff. That's another stressor. College is a big stressor, right? Peer relationships are a big stressor. So without talking too much, I would say I think there's a lot of stress. And then, well, let's think about the communal or community stressors, right? We have different communities that are experiencing different things. The immigrant community, the Black community right now are experiencing more stressors and more hostility. That's obviously going to affect you. It's affecting your parents. You're hearing your parents talk about it, right? You're seeing the news, more stress. And so there's a lot of normal stressors. There's external stressors. To me, the most helpful is to remember that all of that is a good, normal response. Mm-hmm. If you're more stressed out right now, that makes sense. I'd be concerned if you weren't. Right? So how do you use those coping skills you guys were talking about that are more healthy to help you get through that as your stress gets up? Because a lot of youth are struggling now for internal and external things. And it's just about taking that step to feel a little bit better and get more support.
We have to talk about social media because a Surgeon General advisory reported that 95% of teens use social media, and spending more than 3 hours a day on social media can double our risk of experiencing depression and anxiety. Why do you think social media has such an impact on our self-esteem and mental health?
Yeah. It has a lot to do with those developmental changes that we talked about, right? Your brain is developing, you're deciding who you are, you're having more responsibility, and that dopamine you're more sensitive to dopamine, and or you have more dopamine in your body that's making you look for that good feeling. So when those are I don't like to use the term risk factors because, again, those are normal things, right? Mm-hmm. Starting to decide who I am, starting to have different hormonal changes. The thing about social media is it meets you right in that point, and those are more vulnerable points. It's easier to look for a feel-good feeling on Instagram or TikTok, whatever, Mm-hmm. It's easier to kind of fall into that, zone out into that, because your brain is kind of being pulled to that, okay? The other piece of that is if you're deciding who you are, people on social media telling you who you are or how you should look or how you shouldn't look or what's good and what's bad, that's going to have a heavier impact on you because you're deciding that right now, right? In theory, I, as a 38-year-old, know better, in theory, who I am, right? So in theory, when I'm on social media, it shouldn't affect me as much. But you guys are really deciding that. You're deciding who you are. You're deciding what matters to you, and it's going to influence you a lot. And then we think about cyber stuff, cyberbullying, right? When someone is unkind online, it's not like at school where you can leave it at home. Sorry, you can leave it at school. You can go home and leave it at school. It follows you everywhere. It's on your phone. And that's not like 100 people at school who are seeing it now. It's millions all over the world. And so it's much more dangerous when people are even unkind online because it carries such a power dynamic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
I can really understand how social media has such a big impact on my mental health, because I catch myself comparing my life or whatever or how I style myself to other people, and it's made me much more aware, I guess. When I'm getting dressed in the morning, I'm what is this pretty, or is this trending? Is this something that would boost my reputation? And I think social media is definitely something that should be limited within that age group, because it has such a big influence. And so seeing online how this new generation is using so much more social media, they're giving iPads at a really young age, is really concerning. And I think that's something that should be acted upon, because of how it's going to affect them in the future, since they're still really developing and stuff. Additionally, sometimes we're really good at hiding our feelings from our parents or teachers. What red flags should they be looking for to know we're actually struggling, even if we say we're fine?
Yeah, so my answer for this is very similar to what I said for you all and your friends or yourselves, right? Mm. Adults know you well because they're your adults. They've been caring for you for your whole life, hopefully. And so when they have a gut feeling something's off, they need to follow that, right? Mm-hmm. If there's a change in how someone's eating, sleeping, how they're coping with social media or other things, or talking more about their weight or having more negative thoughts that go from, we have negative thoughts when we have a bad day, but if they're going for a long time, adults need to really pay attention to, I feel like something's off. And even though a youth may not respond to that, right? Because you guys sometimes don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. Reaching out to someone who might be able to support them and how to support you at that time is really helpful.
I totally agree. I feel like parents, adults, even your friends that are around you daily and that really know you should definitely pay attention to those changes in your life. Now, DPS is a super diverse students. It's super diverse. Students come from a variety of cultures that don't really approach mental health with traditional counseling. How can our schools do a better job of using culturally rooted practices like talking circles to incorporate our cultures and identities as a part of the healing process instead of just using one-size-fits-all Western therapy?
Yeah, good question. I think what's most important here is a combination of teachers need to do some research. Teachers, districts, principals need to do some research. We live in a world where we do the one-size-fits-all thing, right? And that doesn't work in education or in mental well-being. And so teachers, districts, principals need to do some research and understand what works for different cultures. Know who's in their schools, know who's in their classrooms. What are those cultures doing to be well, right? Talking circles is one. You can talk a lot about in the Latino community ideas of like food, being together every day after school, right? You all have this really great way, and I don't want to speak for you, so correct if I'm wrong, right? But no, speaking who you are, you guys do that really well as a Black culture to each other and not on your own. Those are ways, without having to go see a therapist, that you can build up your students. Now, we have to be careful as adults to listen, right? Because I can do all this research, but the last thing I want to do is come to you and be like, well, this is what you need because you're Black, right? No. This is what I've learned. How does that sit with you, right? Bring some of that into the classroom, bring some of that into relationships, but also have some humility in listening to like, I'm Black, but I also live in a colonized world and this other thing works better for me, right? And so how do we know what culturally we can bring up with our students while also listening very well? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
It does.
If a student wants to talk to their parents but is scared of being judged or being told to just get over it, what advice can you give them to show that they're actually a safe space for conversations about our mental health?
Yeah. We as adults really like to think we can fix your problems for you. And that's because we care for you and we want you to do well and we don't want you to go through hard things. And we as adults, I'm not really speaking to you right now, I'm speaking to the adults, right? We as adults have to understand that one, we usually can't. We can't always fix it. Yes, we should and can step in when there's something fixable that's happening at school for our youth. That's our role. Sometimes though, there's no fix. It's just part of being a youth at this age in the world we live in. And so as adults, the best thing we can do is use words like, and I know you guys don't need to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway, is use words like, I'm here if you need me, right? You don't have to talk, but I'm here if you need me. Or when you guys do come to us with something, we can say something like, do you want my advice or do you just want me to listen? So the idea here for adults is, I am being human with you. I'm showing empathy. I'm actually showing you that even though I might not be able to fix it, I'm going to walk through it with you, right? And then, naming what we see. So if you tell me that someone at school said something that was harmful, I'm not going to say, well, don't be sad, it'll be better, because that's attaching a judgment to it. Instead, I'm going to say, I hear that someone said something to you at school that was harmful and hurtful, and then validate it. I would feel the same way, or I bet other people would feel the same way. Instead of trying to jump in and be like, don't be sad, it'll get better, right? Really just practicing active listening, renaming what we hear. Again, I'm talking to adults, not to you all. Though it would be helpful for your relationships too, right? Active listening, renaming what we hear, and then validating it without judging it. Not saying, well, anger is bad, or don't be angry, don't be sad. Just be like, yeah, I would feel sad too. Or it makes sense to me that you'd feel sad.
I get you. What are some healthy habits we can start today to help support our mental well-being?
I would ask you guys that question. What feels healthy for you when you're feeling stressed to practice mental well-being or feel better?
I feel like for me, what feels healthy is like taking a walk or just being off of my phone, like not waking up and immediately checking my phone or trying to force myself to just stay off of my phone. Find other things to do, whether that's drawing or whether that's journaling. I love to sing, so I definitely do that too. Even honestly, listening to music, I try not to always get trapped in the music part. And if I do, gospel is a really strong one that really helps me. And, just being active and taking a walk and staying off of my phone and just things like that, taking care of myself, investing in myself.
Yeah. So going outside, art, creativity,
Yes.
singing.
Even going to the spa, whatever. Just stay off of your phone. Stay off of electronics is a big one.
Yeah, I hear that. I definitely hear that. Anyone else?
I think I relate to a lot of the habits that Andrea has. For me, I like to take a break and be alone.
Yes.
Just take a second to breathe, to think, to just get everything out,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not really sure because I wouldn't say it's healthy, but I would just go to sleep because if sleep feels really nice, but at the same time it's not the healthiest because I'm not addressing what I feel, and I think that's something that is important if you're dealing with something that's been causing you stress, is to confront it or not outright ignore it, because then it could get worse. So it's not the healthiest, but it helps it a little bit.
Yeah. So the thing, and I want to hear what you have to say too, Khadija, but the thing about sleep is it is reparative.
Yeah.
So it is, especially for youth, it's very good to get sleep because it brings down your nervous system and it's helping you with development. And you're right. If we sleep to cope with everything, we might not be doing it in a healthy way, right? So my challenge for you would be, what are ways that I can name what I'm feeling right now? That's how I process it. I'm feeling frustrated because, normal, right? Before you take a nap. So kind of walk through I'm feeling frustrated because of this. That's probably makes sense. Maybe have a little action plan, okay, I'm feeling frustrated because of this. I'm going to talk to this person tomorrow, or I'm going to text someone about it, right? And then take a nap, because taking a nap can be helpful. But like you said, if you're doing it to avoid processing, we don't want to get out of that habit. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would you say, Khadija?
I like to take care of self, I don't devices. I grew up in a household where you never got a device even when you hit 13, you don't got a device. You don't need no device. What you need a device for? You can call your mom at school. You can call from school phone. You don't need a device. You can watch TV. Got TV shows on the TV. Paint, draw, color.
Yeah.
Got something to do. Yeah. But I'm not gonna keep talking. But where can our listeners go if they realize today that they need some extra support, or just want to learn more about the resources to help the young people in their lives?
Yeah. I would say if someone is feeling as though they need more support after what we talked about today, and hearing this conversation, best thing to do is just talk to someone about it. I talk a lot to youth about their trusted adult, and a lot of youth assume that I'm talking about their parents, which is great if their parents are their trusted adults. That's not the case for everyone, or in some situations, parent is a trusted adult in this situation, but not in another. So someone to talk to just to get it out, right?
Right.
And then I really appreciate there's a website. It talks specifically about what youth are going through in this developmental stage in the world, and ways adults can walk through listening and showing empathy and supporting them.
Well, Kat, this has been a great conversation. We thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today and have this conversation about how we can help maintain a healthy mental well-being.
We also want to thank you for checking out this episode. Please check in with a young person in your life and allow them to have an honest conversation about their mental health.
Be sure to check out the resources we mentioned during the episode if you're looking for information that can help you learn more about how to help your child with their mental well-being.
And please support our podcast by sharing this episode with your family and friends. You can find Black Voices in Color on all major podcast platforms under the DPS Podcast Network. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Denver Public Schools Plus.
See you next time.